everyone. Welcome to The Secret of Love. And this is a monthly show for those of you who are just beginning to watch the program. You can join us at any time. And for those of you who have been coming along each month, thank you. And we really hope that this is impacting you in some way. Let us know. It's always great to know that. And in fact, I would love to have someone from the audience, somebody who is watching us consistently and who has read The Secret of Love, the book, and has found a shift in their own relationships. So I would love to interview you if you would like to do that as a guest. Sometimes I've had colleagues come in, I'll interview them. But it's always great to have somebody who's really had a shift in their life just from reading the book, and that often happens. And today we're going to be I'm going to be revisiting something that comes up time and again, which is communication, right? I mean, many of you know that I have a private practice in Hartford. I also have a global, West Hartford, I'm sorry. I also have a global online counseling and coaching practice. And no matter where somebody comes from the globe, from around the world, it's pretty much what they would term an issue of communication with either their children, their parents, their spouse, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, employees, their boss. It appears as though the problem is in a breakdown in communication. And really, the problem is a breakdown in listening. Because communication we think of as how we are relating to the other person, how we are getting our point across to the other person, and why their communication seems so odd to us, or so, we call it a separate reality. It seems sometimes like they're from another planet because they see things so differently than we do. So the main thing that happens in communication is pretty much one of three, if you boiled it all down, one of three things. It's actually one thing, but I'm going to point out these 3 points to you, which is that when two people are trying to have a meeting of the minds, right? I mean, why else would we enter into any communication if we're not after ultimately a meeting of our two minds, or 3 minds if you're talking to more people or your family? So here's the 3 things that often happen. One is an argument breaks out, right? Because each party is trying to get their point across. So often somebody will kind of withdraw, right? Because they just can't handle the arguments anymore. If you took Psychology 101 in school, you learned about fight or flight. So people tend to either really get in there and get heated up, like maybe they've been holding something in for a long time and then they just explode. And the person they're speaking to will either explode with them. If you ever watch 2 people arguing something out, you realize, boy, this is not going anywhere. Nobody is getting their point across. Or the opposite happens, where the other person just can't handle that explosion, so they withdraw or even walk away. And the person walking away does not realize that that just upsets the speaker all the more, because they feel as though they're just being, what was that popular term that was used for that teenagers were using, dissed, that they're just not being respected at all. They're being disrespected when the person walks away. So the other thing that happens is that people, like, they just get misunderstood, really. There's a misunderstanding that occurs. And somebody will take something the wrong way. And in fact, that person often swears that the way they took it is correct. And the speaker who's trying to explain what they're thinking is wrong. I know this sounds so silly, but that's the human brain for you. That we have this tendency, humans have this tendency to think that whatever we're thinking is correct and absolute truth. Even when the speaker is saying, well, actually, I didn't mean that at all. This is what I meant. I know it's hard to believe. I've seen this play out with so many couples mainly, but also all sorts of groups, where the listener actually believes their own thoughts over what the person is trying to communicate. Don't take my word for it. I say this over and over during these broadcasts. Don't take my word for it. Check it out in your own life. Life is like a learning laboratory. I'm just maybe planting some seeds for you. But as you go about your life, and do this without judgment, without negative judgment. Just see it as the human condition, because you'll learn from that. That's what this program is about. That's what the book, The Secret of Love, is about. To really educate people, that we live in an inside-out world. There's many books now about this. There's a book called The Inside Out Revolution by Michael Neal. Jack Pransky wrote a book called Somebody Should Have Told Us. I could go on, and you could find a list, and I really recommend this, on a nonprofit site, a website called 3PGC. It's the number 3, PGC, Principles Global Community, 3 Principles Global Community. Hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know. There's many, many, many webinars, videos, podcasts, so much free education there. And I highly recommend that people spend time there. If you make yourself what we would call a student of the principles, or a student of innate health, or a student of resiliency. Because when you look inside to where the 3 principles of mind, thought, and consciousness are creating your experience, we are like projectors projecting our experience on life, which totally explains why you and your office mate, or you and your partner in life, see things so differently. Because your experience of what's out there, or of each other, is coming through your own thinking that is imbued with all your past experiences, how you interpreted all those past experiences, what you picked up from other people, magazines, all learned ways of thinking about the world, yourself, your relationships. It's conditioned. So we want to come back to really unconditional love, where you have compassion and understanding that the person speaking may not know this. They may not know, and chances are they don't know. Because although this is going out worldwide, there's still many, many people in the world who never even heard of innate health, innate well-being, the power of resiliency through an understanding of these three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. So have compassion, have understanding. It's not your job to teach people, although you can certainly share what your understanding is, whatever level of understanding you have about how this works. But you know, our being is like a system. It's like a, you can compare it to physical systems in the world, like a computer. Or I was just in awe before sitting down to do this broadcast of how Jennifer puts it all together, you know, on this huge board and knows where all the buttons and how it works. She knows how it works so she can get a program on television. It looks extremely complicated to me, but she has an understanding of the system. Well, when you get an understanding of our system, the human mind, you'll see it not just in yourself, and that's the first place to start, to look inside yourself. And then you'll see how other people operate the same way. And, you know, please don't beat yourself up when you start looking in this direction and you realize, you know, mistakes you've made in the past. You want to be grateful to realize that, because until we have a realization, nothing would change. We would just be going about our life as though it's all happening to us and we're the victim of whatever is out there or whatever somebody says to us. But when you turn the telescope around, and it's like putting on a whole new set of glasses, a new lens that you're looking at through the world, you'll realize the innocence in not understanding this, in not having an understanding of how this works. So I'm going to show you what happens. You know, I'm going to make up some stories. Some of it is, you know, from my personal experience or experience of colleagues or clients or friends or family even. I'm going to make up a story, a little vignette for you, and show you what it's like when you are in an understanding of how our system works, how different the communication is. Let's say someone comes to you. That someone could be anyone, your partner, your friend, your relative, and they're upset with you. And they come at you with a bunch of stuff that they think you've been doing wrong. They think you've been inconsiderate. Well, most people operating from outside in, who don't have any understanding about their system working from the inside out, would take offense to that. They'd go into defense mode and they'd start, you know, pointing out that the reason they did those things was because of this, that, or even what the other person had done to them. They can validate it all in their mind. And that's where they go. They go to validation, you know, more likely than not. Now, when somebody has that same onslaught happen to them and they remember and they realize that, you know what, this person is coming from their own thinking, I want to just really listen to them. I want to really listen and see what they're coming from, see how they're experiencing me. What a different world, because then, we'll say this, you know, I'm the listener, I would just be there with them and I'd look within and maybe I'd have a question for them, like, you know, maybe I would hear that they were thinking this and I was thinking that. I wouldn't be defensive about it. I'd have nothing to defend because it's our thinking. We can't help what we think. But what a gift that we can think about what we think. We can reflect on it and see if there's an adjustment we can make, or maybe there's an apology that we didn't even realize we had come across that way or said something that slighted them. So a couple of things are coming to my mind as stories, and I don't think they're for public viewing. So let me think of a story that is another example of somebody who shuts down, you know, the kind of the opposite of the two people fighting, but somebody who will just walk away or shut down, or, you know, they can't handle it. They know that they're entering on slippery ground here if they were to come back with anything, and so all they can do is just take a break from it. So that person, again, I'll show you the difference between outside-in thinking and inside-out thinking. That person would just walk away and not say anything, and they think that they've done a good job because they walked away, and in fact, they've had people tell them to walk away. Yeah, one of my clients had been involved with a probation officer who said, well, just walk away from it. And, you know, that was well-intentioned advice because, you know, that person doesn't want to go, you know, be arrested again for domestic violence. Well, yeah, so that's good advice. But for somebody coming from an inside-out understanding, they'd be able to say, I can't hear you right now. I want to know what you're saying, but I have to hear it in a quiet state of mind. I'm gonna, let's go our separate ways for a little bit. You know, I'm gonna go take a walk. You do what you wanna do to settle down, and let's come back in an hour and let's have a heart-to-heart talk about this. Wow. Now, the person being upset who doesn't know about inside out versus outside in, they might keep going. That's true. They might not have heard what the listener was trying to communicate because they have this idea that they've got to straighten it out and figure it out right now. Well, as long as the listener stayed calm and stated their piece and didn't leave slamming a door behind them, but left quietly to regroup. And here's another point. When you start seeing this inside-out understanding of life, you'll be tapping into a deeper wisdom because you're not going to be in your head trying to figure it out so much. So there's space, there's room for this deeper wisdom to come through. Common sense. You've heard, you know, people talk about common sense and wisdom. That is so available to people when they quiet down. So when things get heated and you part ways for an hour or two to calm down, sometimes it doesn't even take that long, but best to leave yourself as much space as you need. Don't be thinking about it in your head. You want space. You want to forget about it so that a deeper wisdom can come through. And I know I've used this example. I probably need to find another example. It's kind of my favorite one to describe how this works. Deeper wisdom. Say you run into somebody, you're shopping for groceries, and they approach you and they say, hi, Lori, so nice, you know, to run into you, and you want to say hi, whatever their name is, but you can't find their name. So you like go into the Rolodex of the mind trying to flip through, you know, what's the name, what's the name? And meanwhile, you're not really listening to what they have to say. But somehow you get through that with some amount of grace, and you forget about it. You're 3 aisles down looking at the ingredients in a can of soup, and the name comes to mind when you're not looking. when you're not looking for it. It's totally off your mind. Your mind is on the ingredients on this can, and then their mind comes to you. That's how wisdom works for anything in life. Even a big project that you have to figure out at your work site, the best thing is to clear your mind. And another proof of this is a study that was done with really high-level executives. They asked them, what are the 3 times that, or what is the time that you get the best ideas for your projects at work? The 3 top choices were, you might have guessed, none of them were when they were at work. They were driving in the car, on vacation, and when was the 3rd one? In the shower, because people are not thinking about what to do with their project during those 3 times. They're driving and the mind is free, thoughts come and go, they float through nice and easy. Same with vacation, and the same with in the shower. Now, I'm not saying go do one of those things. I'm just saying look at the system behind it. Look at how it works. It works that way because they didn't have the problem on their mind. So when you go for a walk to get space, to calm down, don't be thinking about the problem. Get it off your mind. Look at the scenery. Get back into a quiet space. Take things off your mind. And then come back, because you'll have a lot more love in your heart. That love and understanding and compassion for the other person or people is not going to be clouded by your rant. It's not going to be clouded by a bunch of thoughts. And come back, in quiet with your ears wide open and just listen. I know I did a whole show on listening because it's just so valuable to be able to listen without having your own thoughts on your mind. And that is so, so important in communication. Like I said in the beginning, it's not a communication problem, it's a listening problem. And there's a really good story in The Secret of Love about that. So it's a little, it's more than 2 minutes, so hang in there with me, because the end result will be worth what you heard. So the chapter 17 it's called Listen for Connection, and a quote by Sydney Banks, our teacher. Words are merely a form. Listen not to words, but to that which words attempt to convey. You're listening for what the speaker is trying to convey without anything on your end, without trying to show them how they're wrong or fix them or help them even. The biggest help you can give is wide ears, wide open listening. So Alan says, while listening to Jean, I noticed my own thoughts kept getting in the way. I imagined swatting at them as if they were flies buzzing around my head. Then suddenly something changed. It was as though the flies flew away to find another busy mind to plague, while my mind quieted down. The more interested I became in what Jean had to say, the less interested I was in my own thoughts. And before I knew it, I was fully with the experience that she was describing. I began to really hear what Jean was telling me. The quieter my mind got, the more engaged I became. I could understand her feelings more clearly than I ever had in the past. Judgment never crossed my mind. It felt incredibly freeing. With no feeling of pressure to tell her what to do, there was nothing to be done. I was simply drinking in what Jean was telling me, and I could feel her experience. It felt great to be with her so solidly, no matter what she was expressing. I felt so connected to her just in the act of listening deeply. Jean, imagine the bliss I felt when Alan quieted down and didn't try to fix, cajole, or coax me away from my feelings. In the past, I would think, can't I just have my feelings without him trying to take them away? What's so wrong with feeling bad? It won't last forever. I knew that I'd live through it. For once, I felt as though he really got what I was hoping to convey to him. Alan, I had heard the same story for Jean for months, maybe even a year, yet I had actually never heard what she was really saying. For the first time, I understood that she was feeling degraded. I heard Jean say that she was being treated badly at work. She felt belittled and diminished. I thought she hated how unfair things were there. So I would try to help her feel better. Then I would say something insensitive. Well, you know, life is never fair. And then wonder why she got so mad at me and yelled, I don't care if it's fair or not. What Jean was trying to tell me was that she wanted to find a way to regain her dignity at work. I realized that she didn't care about fairness in the first place. I just think that's such a beautiful story, and it's a true story. It was the result of an interview we did with people who really started to see the value and importance of listening, even when you feel, you know, this was somebody talking about difficulty at work, but even when your person, whoever is speaking to you, is having difficulty with you, if you can just stay really quiet, and if you're having a hard time staying quiet, you have to buy some time. Ask for some time. Ask for, you know, it doesn't have to be a full day. It might have to be, depending on how upset the person is. You might have to wait a full day, but it's all okay. Quiet is what you're after, a quiet mind. So we're coming to the end of our program today, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I really recommend again that you have a look at 3pgc.com, or it might be .org. Yes, 3pgc.org. You'll have to sign up for a username and password, but that's just so that you can, and everything is free there. You may find advertisements for some retreats. I'm going to be putting on a retreat in October in North Carolina and another retreat in December in the Caribbean. So I'll let you know about those as we get closer. And actually, if you log on to 3principlestherapy.com, you'll see all the ads for retreats. I highly recommend them. They don't have to be a retreat I'm doing, any of my colleagues. I would highly recommend, because that's when all of this really starts to take hold in a really deep way. So thank you again. I look forward to seeing what we're going to talk about next month. And that can be up to you. If you send in questions, I will definitely address them in the next meeting that we have here. Okay, thanks, and have a wonderful month. Bye for now.